Now to submission from Auckland City Mission. With the room, thank you. Come up to the table. Helen, I think we've got, don't we? Kia ora, Helen. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah.
We have you for 10 minutes this morning, so if you'd like to begin your presentation, we'll hand over to you.
Kia ora, tēnā koutou katoa, Chair, members of the Select Committee. I would like to genuinely take this opportunity at the beginning of this magic 10 minutes to look each and every one of you in the eye and to thank you for the privilege of being here today. I want to acknowledge your role and this incredible work that you are doing in service of our country currently. This is the most important conversation that is happening in this place, and you are our kaitiaki and guardian, so tēnā koutou katoa. I'm going to take the submission as read and speak to the heart of the matter in the next couple of minutes. I'll begin where it's important to begin. Ko waiahau. Ko tamarau no rongo e te rangi, ko rongo uiroa te tupuna hiki iho kia pari te rangi te hui. Ko te atiawa no rongo e te rangi, no te atiawa o te waka a Maui ahau. Ko tōku tūranga, ko te Manutaki o te Tāpui Atawhai, ko Helen Robinson e mihi atu nei. I am the Auckland City Missioner, and I have the privilege here of being here today with our manutia, Jean McMurray, Joanne Reedy, and Natasha Mackey, who leads our community housing services and is also the leader of our tangata tiriti rōpū at the mission. It's important that I very briefly begin with my own personal story because in this conversation, the personal is incredibly political. You will have heard in my pipiha that I acknowledge my whakapapa to Te Atiawa Te Waka Maui, and I want to call into this room our tupuna Elizabeth Aldridge, who is the grandmother of my grandfather Carnegie Robinson. She was the daughter of Paritirangi Te Hui and Michael Aldridge. So you are looking at a living, breathing example of the result of the literal marriage between both the colonizer and the colonized. Myself and my family across generations have received the privilege of that colonization. And there is an and that and is incredibly important. We have also suffered the trauma of that alienation and that colonization. Just over 18 months ago, I stood with my sister outside our marae and are yet able to go in. So when I talk about the trauma, I understand that viscerally in my body, and I have heard the heart's longing for return and for restoration. And perhaps the most poignant thing about this story is not so much my or our story, is that I know that this is shared across hundreds of thousands of people in our country, a longing for a return home and a restoration of a way that could be. I lead the Auckland City Mission. We are 104 years old, founded by Jasper Calder just over 104 years ago in Auckland City. We have two key purposes. One, to respond to the reality of suffering in our city, and two, and importantly, to challenge the very structures that create, sustain and perpetuate that suffering. That is why I and we are here today. On behalf of the whānau that we serve over that extraordinary 104-year history, we stand unequivocally against this bill. I acknowledge that myself as leader, the licence and then leadership across the mission here, and particularly with Joanne and Natasha here with me today, is actually given to us from the very people that we seek to serve. Today, it is their story of poverty, of trauma, of exclusion that we bring with us. We bring our suffering or their suffering with us, noting that it is that very suffering that stops them being able to be here at this table. Every year, we respond to the needs of thousands of people who don't have a home, people who don't have access to food, people who don't have access to healthcare. Those people are disproportionately Māori and overwhelmingly so. This is important. There has been irreparable harm done through the process of colonisation and the constant and consistent breaches of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. There is a direct link to the suffering we have seen and see from that colonisation and the breach of Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Let me give you a few very recent facts. In 2024, of the 24 people who died who were accessing mission services, 2/3 of those were Māori. In 2024, at our medical centre, the Calder Centre, the average age of death was 57. In 2024, just under 2,500 people who we spoke to identified as Māori and could not tell us their iwi or hapu, the clearest and most poignant sign of disenfranchisement. It's important that I bring the words, particularly of one of our whānau, into this room. His name is Te Wharikura Te Paihua, who was once a rough sleeper and is now housed, and I will say this specifically. Where I slept in Victoria Park was just 30 metres away from where Te Tōpā once was. I was sleeping in the place where my ancestors once slept. This was their home, so in a sense I wasn't homeless, but I longed to be housed and safe. This proposed bill, should it become law, would magnify the irreparable harm that has already occurred. The process itself, the exclusion of iwi and hapu in its creation, is a key indication of the total lack of partnership that has occurred in the development of this bill. Secondly, and critically important for us, one of the key tenets of this bill is this theoretical notion of equality before the law, and theoretically we agree. What we do know is that in practice that never occurs. We call for equality, or in the words of Marilyn Waring, substantive equality. The experience of our people tells us is that if you have been colonised, you will be less likely to be able to access, to have opportunity, and to achieve outcomes. Colonisation matters. What happens to us matters. The mission is not absolved in this story. 4 years ago, on the receipt of our Ingawa Māori name, Te Tāpui Atawhai, we apologised for our contribution towards colonisation, and in the great words of Dame Whina Cooper, or in her words, called for not one day more. That not one day more takes us now to a place where we seek to be in relationship with iwi Māori and tamaki makaurau through the country and within our organisation, to a deep listening that dares to hear those whispers of the heart. We are anything but perfect in this journey, but we acknowledge that there is an alternate way, that there is intent, and that there is actions, including specialised Māori services, Māori leadership, genuine sharing of power and resource to back up that intent. One last thing. I call you, the decision makers of our country, when you are making the decision to come and to listen to the Māori woman who is coming to us because she does not have money for food. I call you, the decision makers of this country, to come with us when you are making your decision to listen to the terminal diagnosis of a young Māori man. I call you, the decision makers of this country, to come and be with us when you make your decisions, as we sit with the queer who was found dead on the streets of Auckland, so disenfranchised from her whenua and whānau that she is denied the ultimate dignity and she dies publicly. On behalf of my tupuna, both Māori and Pākehā, on behalf of the hundreds and thousands of people who have sought refuge in Te Tāpui Atawhai, refuge from the impact of colonisation, we call for the harm to stop. Do not abandon Te Tiriti o Waitangi, which is what this bill suggests. Instead, We call for the honouring. And we call for you as our leaders to heal.
Kia ora, Helen, Joanne, and Natasha, thank you for being with us. That's the time for submission this morning, so I just want to acknowledge you on behalf of the committee. We're going to our submission now from Manutaki Children and Young People's Commission.